Hello, my name is Reg Lewis, and I am about to make a bold claim, which is this. If these three charts behind me are properly introduced, are properly distributed and received by a wide enough audience, then I am certain that they will have a profound impact upon our planet, upon our global society as we know it. How so, you may ask? By serving as graphic organizers that help people eliminate and reduce unhappiness and or feelings of disconnection, while also providing a pathway leading to peace and or joy and unlimited beauty, in spite of the very complex and relentlessly demanding act of living that we all must do. Now, why do I have the audacity to think, to believe that I am qualified to deliver such results? Well, for one, this happens to be my 20th consecutive year as a New York City public high school teacher. In the Bronx. And in that time, I've made the studied observation that whenever you take between 12 to 34 children or teenagers and you place them in a classroom with an educator, their immediate collective subconscious goal is to discover, how do we destroy the central nervous system of this adult? It's nothing personal. It really is not personal. It's actually in the DNA. There's evidence to support this, and I understand. But nonetheless, I had to develop some radical strategies to protect myself, to protect my mental health and well-being. And this here is the story about how I came into possession of some of those sanity and soul-saving solutions. As a dedicated educator, I would even dare call this the missing curriculum, but of course, more on that later. So, with that being said, it goes a little bit something like this. The job was about to break me. All I was trying to do was calm the class down enough so I could distribute that week's vocabulary quiz. That's all. But no. Capital N-O-P-E. Please let me explain. See, by March, no one cared anymore because it had already felt like 7 monotonous months of forced labor, and the full body fatigue had already set in that we could no longer disguise. And I'm talking about everyone. We're talking about the entire staff and students alike hating this cold vacation this month, despising it so much, irritating and tapping the spine. I'm telling you, everyone drained by this dry, formal education. Death March, it should actually be called, because you can hear it. Those awkward, standardized steps echoing through those long and flexible academic corridors from every floor to floor, wall to wall. In other words, when it was time for me to finally confront my 8th period of 9th graders on a Friday, no thank less, it came as no surprise when I said, Denise, can you please sit down? We're about to start the quiz. And she ignored me. And I said, Jaden, can you please stop tossing sticks of gum to everyone? But he ignored me. And I said, Monique, why are you ripping out pages from the textbook? But she ignored me. And I said, Deshaun, come on. Can you please stop pointing your finger in Ashley's face and making that gun sound? But what? He ignored me. And I said, hey, settle down. Look, hey, excuse me. Hey, settle down. Hey, please. Hey, settle. Hey, down. Hey, hey, hey. Like I was singing a Kool and the Gang song. I don't know. But anyway, bottom line, he ignored me. And she ignored me. And all of them back there, they ignored me. And you know, even that small group of nice kids on the side, they ignored my pleas too. And then she ignored me again. But only this time, she also rolled her eyes and made a biting remark, which managed to get under my skin, which wasn't, I discovered, as thick as I thought, because it actually went bone marrow deep about how I couldn't teach. And as she sucked her teeth for additional punctuation, the rowdy lunchroom racket that filled my class had reached its peak, threatening to devour me. Oh no, that's all I could take. Injured, insulted, I snapped and yelled, hey, you're gonna listen to me? Pounding the board once with the side of my fist to repair my self-respect, although it almost shattered my wrist. This is for your grade, not mine. It counts, and I could fail the entire class right now. Watch, if you don't be quiet and take this seriously, I'm serious. But it was I alone who had failed, because no one flinched. Not 1 inch did they budge. I needed to be nudged or pinched honestly to interrupt my disbelief, because although this march of mutiny was, as I said, inevitable, right? It was expected to be wicked. That exact same temper tantrum just a few weeks previous could still produce what? It could still produce crickets. You hear what I'm saying? While what did this outburst induce? Just a few barely concealed giggles, which filled the atmosphere with an adolescent stench of disrespect and dismissal, which all but clinched their victory, mocking me for my cute little 2 years of duty in the English trenches, which left me in shock. But what was really killing me was secretly knowing that no matter who I thought had an obvious hand hidden in my defeat, I had no fingers to point. Because in spite of my chilling testimony of occupational burnout, describing the cruel and unusual torture techniques, tools, and drills flipped on us professionals to endure, I knew for sure that that demonstration of youth rebellion, no matter how reckless and ruthless it appeared, an ugly battle of wills indeed, was all simply a raw reflection of my poor classroom management skills. Woe was me. So it was at that point that I officially retreated. I took 2 or 3 trepidatious steps back. And I leaned against the side of my desk as my only show of support. Stranded, stuck there, abandoned, I swear I felt both broken and together fixed in this pitiful portrait, the 1,000-yard stare. Some of you know the look. Bleak, eyes 100% blank, for I did not blink once during this extended stretch. A quiet wreck within my tangled frame. I had effectively become rigid and stiff. But if I could here be brutally honest, it was also kind of humorous, which I could now admit. Why? Because I'm quite certain it had to be comical, almost cartoonish to see me, Mr. No, I got everything under control. I know these kids, we come from the same. To see me become painfully irrelevant, day after day, dating myself, constantly out of touch, looking stranger to them than I can ever know. While I presently performed, live in the flesh, a material dense meltdown, from academic rigor to rigor mortis. Dead funny to witness, I'm sure, because I had become the very teacher that I would have made fun of when I was their age, right? A fresh boy, man. In the 80s, I know I tortured my fair share of innocent, my belated apologies in advance, educators and staff who had occupied that very building from which I was a graduate in 88, rap's most golden year. An infinite mirror. Please take a closer look. See, I told you I date endlessly. But I digress. I'm sorry, yes, it's true. That's where I graduated, from knock-knock jokes to dropping F-bombs, unapologetically upon those grounds of the Northeast Bronx. Harry S. Truman, to be exact, with a dash of deja vu, to be clear. Perhaps I'm missing the point, glancing back to those good old days where I escaped the punishment, or so I thought, of harassing my teachers, holding their lessons hostage by placing headlocks on the content with my constant class clown comments, questions, and concerns. Or I would lead an ambush with backhanded jabs and off-color snaps behind a screen of textbooks to detonate the sneak attacks of laughter that would often smash the entire lesson plan to smithereens. And I wasn't even finished then. No. For I would usually go on to perform a one-man standing ovation to commemorate my successful assault and for the courage it took to further slap the face of authority on cue, with the encore of taking my leave of the room without permission or pass. After all, sabotage is very taxing work, and my funny bones had earned that intermission, so I replenished them with a relaxed victory lap. I initiated so many of those revolutions in those shallow halls. I had no idea that I would one day walk full circle right smack onto that karmic wheel affectionately called, welcome back, N-word Reggie. We have a lot of catching up to do. Ooh, yeah, I bet. You can imagine that I did not mind one bit when that bout of nostalgia began to subside. And I desperately needed a substitute plan on the spot, because I had no time to dwell in that shallow grave of self-pity. No. Truth be told, the pressure principle was the primary motivation that put into gear my partial resurrection as it began to operate on my fear of the unemployment line, which was delicately stitched to my nervous system, every fiber intertwined and further fused by the pressure my principal applied. See, it was her pleasure, either through the element of surprise, as she pried with suspicious peeps on an array of formal observations, which always took their toll, as sleepless nights of prep, head swelling, perpetual perspiration, I literally shook under the probation which resided in her eye alone. And she could shape or equally shift my future like a fickle genie, iffy with those grants, such if it were her wish to deny me of my wish of that tenure that I was oh so desperately praying to God to get. Why? Because I did not wish to endure another stint of marriage, merely as the sophisticated, emotionally supportive husband who also owned the most immature wallet of all time, with the weakest biceps and triceps that couldn't raise nor hold down a full month's rent. No, simply spent way too much on ranting, whining about being financially walloped by the landlord. Lord, listen, how about this? Forget the Powerball and Mega Millions request. Just get me that S, please. I need that satisfactory rating from my principal, or else instead, she may be writing up that grave evaluation of me that could also double as my cryptic headstone or abbreviated obituary that reads or read, Reginald Whalen Lewis Jr., 2006 to 2008, the teaching dead. And you want to know what's scary about that? That's what those children of the 8th period, of the 9th grade, on a March Friday sought to validate and confirm. Like zombie engineers who positively thought that they had successfully produced another fine corpse, and further justified from the point of view which essentially translated into, boys and girls, gather round, gather round. Here on full display for your viewing pleasure, we have yet another cadaver of a rather cool teacher who still nonetheless underestimated and took us for granted, rubbed us the wrong way. Sorry, we don't care to be embalmed after the analysis. So it stands. Every single body gotta earn theirs, fair and square. So like an internal Rubik's Cube, deliberately manipulated, I felt this twisted sensation swiftly turn through the corners of my guts. And I began to squirm with this tangible presence, with these puzzling, unsettled pieces and complexions. Something more like the curious but firm gripping and groping of my intestines, as if both large and small fingers were trying to determine the precise cause of death. What had literally taken my breath away, however, was the realization that my students, they were way past just acting out. No, my students far surpassed that. Listen, these young pupils of mine were actually audacious enough to be performing an autopsy on me, center stage propped up. That's right. Me, dead in the middle. And it didn't seem to matter to them that I had regained consciousness, looking at them flush in the face with live and direct eye contact. Or should I perhaps more accurately say, surgical strikes, because that's how they continued to operate, especially on the residuals of my Bell's palsy, where they poked and prodded and picked, dissecting me with names like Cyclops, Little Eye Lewis, the lopsided one, Blinky, and of course Popeye with a side of chapped bottom lip. No, they just wouldn't quit. And I'll be the first one to admit, sometimes I'm dehydrated in the mouth, sure, but still, they didn't have to saturate me with the overkill. They just kept pouring it on until it converted to rocket fuel, filled me by the gallons. The gall it took to spark jumper teacher pissed me off anew. As if launched by a pilot light, I simultaneously began to cook with those tiny little blues and fly off the emotional handle from under the lid of a humongous pot as an evil, toxic mix of emotions and metaphors that didn't agree with my stomach began to boil over and take a left turn for the worse, as this flammable nausea in my belly quickly began to rise through my body like the gravity of depression reversed. So instead of spiraling down, it spun upwards, gradually transformulating until it gurgled toward my throat. "I'll never survive" was the first phrase. I recognized my fatal odds that this would be the dead ending of my career. As I approached that kamikaze conclusion, for I knew I was about to coat the room with a straight jacket discharge that would deeply disturb the atmosphere, hurling all kinds of spit-based debris behind the insane boom, with the ensuing mushroom cloud of smoke certain to alert the firing squad to ensure that I would effectively join every teacher, tested to the limit, taking out their misery. My dearly departed peers, I'm coming to join you. I could feel it. My termination was near. My last stand, the grand finale for the span of my adult life, literally flashed before my ears. As the language finally came to pass, I could hear myself rumbling and grumbling as I cursed, mumbling spiteful blasphemy beneath my breath before God, and the damn burst like, "I swear I hate every mother and it should be boom, but not quite. Why? Because at that atomic moment, when the most catastrophic, when the most volcanic vocal cord surge in the verbal form of "shut the love up" that had ever erupted, that had ever exploded from the mouth of a public school teacher was supposed to blast off. Something else peculiar took its place, because as the SH part of the phrase commenced to push through the friction of my clenched teeth, right before the could formally escape, the opening sound remained caught in the groove, extending itself, and it slid into a long, loud Now, The adjective and or the verb form for perplexed doesn't even begin to reflect the depth of my reaction. For I genuinely, absolutely had zero clue how my C4 letter and word request had been diffused in such a smooth and diplomatic manner. Shh. Are you sure? How could that be? How? Why? After all, didn't I just try to manifest the most disturbing interpretation of No Child Left Behind that one could ever conceive, could ever imagine? Even by those Mr. Weapons of mass instruction standards, even with the power of those higher order questions, I could not find a logical answer that would satisfy my mind and do me that kindness. Shh. But then a split second later, the following politely spoken words pierced through my hyper-curious examination of the event. And they went like this. Mr. Lewis, are we still taking the quiz? It came from one of the nice kids on the side, to which I replied with a fragile no, faintly shaking my head. But then that gave way to an immediate breakthrough, which led to my mind's response, appearing as a, ah, yes, just after I heard another student say, oh, hallelujah, thank God. Wait, I thought, I think maybe that's it. Perhaps the shush was an act of divine intervention. No, well, of course, because one had saved a few students from another failing grade that they could just not afford, but because two, more importantly, it was responsible for saving my job. It literally saved my insecure career, the realization of which more than stabilized my confusion, blessing me with at least one solid conclusion. Whatever it was, the shh wasn't for my students. No, the shh was for me. Now, it took a few seconds to register, but then this theory of mine was supported by a borderline hallucination. I had to guess, surreally imported through the public address, because once it was time for 8th period to finally come to an end, instead of me hearing that institutional bell go, sending the student body cartwheeling and somersaulting blissfully out my door through that final hoop of the week, that last ring. No, I again heard nothing other than another long drawn out shh through the loudspeaker. And if that moment of madness wasn't enough, it was just about to become a little bit sweeter with what I would call a tropical blend. For that latest illusion of audio was juxtaposed against the most sensitive and much weaker sound of a soft-spoken voice with the slightest accent, which happened to intone this. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. See you next week. And please have a great weekend. This is me symbolically being on the edge. 22 minutes and a half mile later, I stood upon the outdoor platform at the second station from the front of the line, waiting for my number 5 train. And sure enough, as I had failed to successfully conduct that vocabulary quiz, just a half hour removed, I also already definitely knew that I wouldn't have any words to give to describe the carousel of unsettling characters who would enter or dwell in those unmerciful tubes of mass transit, tragically transferring countless staggering figures, both individual and collective, that can never be arrested. I mean, numbers too difficult to comprehend or digest. That's why when my train finally limped into the station on tiptoes, and I chose the most isolated seat from the multiple choices of this yet-to-be-filled pre-rush hour car, and I was truly thrilled to be wedging more distance between me and that academic ordeal, even though it became my primary goal simply to be left alone, simply to be well rested. I felt nonetheless like I was in the process of being schooled, because without even the need of an educated guess, I still naturally knew I was automatically going to be pop tested. Like problem number 1, no delay, of course, for that type of service is at the core of the MTA's severe curriculum, as we're talking about a question of personal space. Upon the very next stop, appropriately named what? Gun Hill Road, with its bold charm, as those grounds conceivably are a portal for a system of alchemy that had the power to convert even the average citizen into a form of ammunition. For with even the slightest nudge, the blood became that fine black powder delicately inclined to explode. Okay, so here we go with that question I mentioned. As the train slowed into the Gun Hill, scoping through the moving window, I began my routine survey to assume the caliber of each passenger doing the platform shuffle, hoping that no one potentially too explosive was about to come aboard. But just before the door could open, I spotted him, way out, on the periphery, appearing raggedy, tattered, unlawful, which triggered me something awful, the automatic reaction blasting a hole right through my most concrete claims of having a vast capacity for compassion with this self-inflicted shot into my humanitarian heart of gold. Perhaps imitation, for it happened far too consistent a pattern, as I could hear myself on this occasion say, "Oh no, please skip this call, my friend. I beg you, please, I beg." But he disregarded my prayers that blew up on this leg of my trip. Imagine the nerve, backfired. For once the doors parted, he entered at the far end of the car, intentional, like a hypocrite seeking missile determined to touch his insensitive target. For my repulsive thoughts served as an active magnet, attracting and past a few passengers and 2 poles between us. He took hold of each for a quick but lethargic moment. In another sick contradiction, my mind steady playing tricks upon me to match his. As I further watched him, ducking and dodging the obstacles sponsored by the state of his mental housing department responsible for promoting and projecting such images of horror currently lodging in his homeless brain. You could see he was a compound fractured youth, prematurely aged. And I knew this to be true because he maneuvered as if he were being chased by invisible bats. And I do mean both, the ones with wings and home run swings threatening to strike. And I refer to the sense of the word meaning contact as opposed to a miss. But luckily for him, they did, at least avoiding that lethal crack of his skull. Smoke addiction? Maybe. Not even a fundraising pitch to my surprise. A curve, however, did send him to the bench where I sat. He plopped but an inch from my hip. But instead of hopping up, my thoughts made that drastic, dramatic shift from dangling prayer to impassioned protest where I just straight up flipped like, oh, come on, man, damn. There's enough space on this iron horse to squeeze like a dozen real life horses on here. Shoot. You got all this room. But just before I could scoot over a little to the left, someone tripped the emergency brakes, locking those steel rims. Down the tracks they screeched. But before that crushing noise could reach my ears, it thrust into the air as a shriek like shh, with the silent reek that pushed against me as the forward motion that ceased, smushed us together on a lean at 45 degrees. I couldn't believe it. Hushed once again. So, of course, it ambushed my ridiculous mental riffs and extinguished whatever petty sparks the friction caused. Overall, I was truly being steered by some mysterious force. Why? God only knows. Hold your horses was the phrase it reared. And from there, everything was placed on indefinite pause. Everything. Well, almost everything. Attention passengers, please be advised, the emergency brakes have been activated. We apologize for the delay. Once the dispatcher releases the train, after investigated and reset, then we will proceed. Thank you for your patience. But it was the very next move that would prove to be the one to officially stop me in my tracks. Performed by my uninvited neighbor, still attached to my thigh, like a Siamese twin. I had to cut him off. We were detached for different reasons as I finally managed to slide to the side. That's when he sat upright with both eyes closed. And I watched him carefully as he carefully placed his callus-rich index finger just over his partially healed lips in a very gesture to match the sound that had been trying to catch my attention for the last 40 minutes or so. And he remained motionless in that pose for like 30 seconds straight. 30 seconds. Froze. He then stood and spoke. He said, "Listen, Lewis, I am here for one purpose and for one purpose only. And that is to convince you that you must begin incorporating the shh into your life immediately. If you ever wish, if you ever want, expect, or even hope to experience any measure of mental peace or quiet in a world simply overrun with too much talk and more talk. Just too many voices, continuous, nonstop. Voices overlapping, colliding, clashing, crisscrossing, just too much talking, can't stop it. It's everywhere. Chatter, chatter, talk, chatter, regardless of issue or topic. Be it well-composed, eloquent, compulsive, and or neurotic, whispered or shouted. The confessions, the complaints, the circular debates, recent studies, statistics, the analytics, the gossip, the bully banter, the $1,000,000 speech, 2 cents, small talk, snap judgments, the punchline or the entire bit, the non sequiturs, the lectures, regardless of tone or intent, doesn't matter, trapped you hear in this verbal traffic, content, concepts, context, inconsistent information, consistently insecure, with your contradictions, your conspiracies, your confidence. Man, we're talking so much insecurity. See, but the crazy thing is, this youth then said to me, the crazy thing is, most of this excessive talk takes place where? It takes place within the confines of our own swollen heads. That's where most of those voices reside. And we have some very, very noisy heads indeed, as you already know well. Would you agree? So ultimately, what am I saying? I am saying that we have been using the shh all wrong. We've been using it to silence others when we should be using it to silence ourselves. That was it. Yeah. That did it. That was all the support, all the direct evidence that I would once and for all need. For I was finally thoroughly convinced, 100%, goodness, that what I witnessed was a definite sign of divine instruction, graciously delivered with delicate intent by a faithful messenger sent in disguise as the forsaken derelict, the chronically dismissed, who sat there with this eerie glow. I couldn't decide if he looked more like some demonic angel or an angelic demon modeling the shiny grime of his gutter-exposed clothes, illuminated by a spotlight filtered through the filthiest window. Okay, done. I was sold, but also spent. Almost even took out a loose $1 or two as an apology offering for my appalling and offensive judgment. Just trying to cement a little mercy or grace with a little bid on the side. But of course, it was a bit too little, too late. As the boy took off, resumed down the aisle, ditching the initial bats till he removed himself to the exit doors, the car stage left. There I was, left alone, trying to play it off with a little laugh. How much $1 costs? Let's just say the message stuck, and it now had my undivided attention. In short, that small gesture, that emphatic yet soft command began to follow me like an emotional support pet. Shh. It kept me company and sought to protect me from anything that could press teeth into my frail profile and cause bruise. Well, psychologically speaking, especially those self-inflicted wounds. So, generally speaking, gradually, the shh repeated those heroics by rescuing me from my most judgmentally exhausting hysterics and histrionics. A courtroom in their head, indeed, grossly overcrowded with rowdy and mouthy rascals, guilty of filthy gossip and magical mind, murder rehearsals, yes, I confess. And when that noisy misconduct and contempt travels to this very day, can you guess what serves as my gavel? What signal is used to restore that order? Order, I want some order in this court, juggling voices from too many sources. Shh. The nonstop chatter, chatter is so pleasantly replaced, shh, with an increased awareness of stillness, shh, silence, and space. My current religion, right under my nose the entire time, literally speaking, or shall I say breathing, which brings me full circle, actually to the two circles that form our nostrils. If you take a closer look, do you realize that they form a figure 8? That's That's why I call these the infinity tunnels. And they help to facilitate the shh. So let me just sort of demonstrate. When I spoke of my new religion and I said it's stillness, silence, and space, I began to worship those as much as I previously worshiped objects, sound, and motion, especially speed, more or less. We're talking about the truest perception management. And all I'm saying is, if you ever want to be present, as opposed to being trapped in the past or in the future or in the past or in the future, you got the anxiety in the future, you got the depression, and you can't be present in your own life. That's when you use the shh. And you know what? You see this, you think, oh, that's capitalism, right? No, that's the vertical finger just reminding you to sometimes quiet this. But it is also capitalism. You know why? Because we have to produce so much. So now I have something here called the gaps in the traps using rails. All that is trying to suggest is that there are certain structures in our lives that will always be there, that we cannot make disappear. Do you drive yourself crazy trying to change things that will always be there? And I don't even want to talk about the traps because you know what they are, right? Anything that you can feel trapped by. Production. But anyway, let me just go to the shortcut. As I said, it's just too much. Relationship awareness, intimacy loops. When I have the rails, I feel that the missing curriculum is this idea of us really learning how to have a relationship with awareness. Or even to hear this line that I've come up with for the crawl space. Nothing is as intimate as the relationship we have with our breath. So, let me just, and I play with it a lot because I say 88, right? Shh. Stillness, breath. When you hold your breath, what is it? It's still. You let it go out 1/8, you got motion. You hold it again, it's still. Let it come in, let it go out, you got the motion. If you pay attention to that, trust me, it will create a little bit of stillness in your brain. Now, I'm not going to go through the rest of this. And the last thing, because someone at the other show said, you didn't say nothing about the third chart. All this does is to illustrate when we usually say that we're in the present moment, that's usually our horizontal minds deceiving us. Because most of the time, the past is this close to us and the future, but it's just a slender vertical form of the present moment that's right here, right? And it's so hard to maintain because we always got to think about what we got to do in 10 minutes or what happened 8 years ago or 5 minutes from now, so on and so forth. But anyway, if you really want to get in depth with that, consultations and workshops are available for a modest fee. Please see me after the show, but let us get back. So I do have one request. The very next time you visit the movie theater, well, if anyone still goes, or the theater, or even your neighbor's living room flat screen, whenever you witness, whenever you hear someone silencing others with this shh, please do me a favor. Oh, and also watch the shushes in the actual movies themselves. You ever see that in the horror movies? Shh, like that shh, make another sound and I'll slash your throat. Or the shh, don't even breathe. He's right outside the closet with the knife. To the good cop, bad cop, shh, shh, sneaking ever so gently up on the suspect. Or the shh, my wife's home early. She's home early from work. To the B movie, lowbrow, outhouse, shh, delivered by the total creep. To the period piece, highbrow, art house, shh, delivered by a pompous elite. To the extra common, rom-com, don't ruin the surprise, shh, and don't tell them I already know. To the hush, little baby, don't say a shh of your favorite cute, most adorable commercial. To the DC Marvel, supervillain rendition, before or after some mass killing. Or similarly, to your most favorite or hated athlete going shh to silence the hostile crowd and the critics. You get it. Whenever you hear it, y'all listen, please, please, please use it as an opportunity to silence yourself. You got it? No, you got it? Ah, good. Now here's the beautiful part. Do you know what this means? This means from this moment forth, without fail, whenever you hear or see any form of the shh, you will be reminded of this conversation, of this advice for you to silence yourself. I 100% guarantee you will never forget this quiet little seed. So right now, without any further explanation, prep, or ado, everyone in this room, please join me all together now, counting down from 3, 2, 1. And I most humbly thank you. Thank you.